be a snowstorm, so we're very happy to finally get this underway. And the presentation today will be delivered by a very proud St. Thomas human rights student, Roman, who will be talking about his first novel, which is a historical fiction based in Burma, and discussing some of the incidents of genocide and consequences of political and historical struggles within that country. So it's a great pleasure to introduce Roman to you, and I hope you enjoy the presentation.
I really appreciate you introducing me, and I really appreciate you having me as a professor. As a little bit about me, when I was 15, I was back in high school back in New Jersey, and I got involved in the local Amnesty International chapter, and I learned about what's happening in Darfur and genocide, and I learned more and more about human rights around the world. I was really traumatized. So at that moment on, I just decided that's what I was devoting my life to, fulfilling all the issues enumerated in international human rights humanitarian law, and Burma was an issue that really traumatized me. Ever since 2007, when those peaceful monks demonstrated against the Burmese government, the Saffron Revolution, I was traumatized that such a thing could happen. And the more I learned about Burma, the more I learned about the ethnic conflict, which I consider genocide against the ethnic peoples in the north, the Karen, the Shan, and the Mon people, which I'll explain later, I became really traumatized. Then came Cyclone Nargis, and how the Burmese government refused humanitarian aid was just unconscionable, to put it mildly. And of course, all the issues relating to torture in the prison system. The list just goes on and on and on. And of course, we're all familiar with Aung San Suu Kyi, who was just recently released, but of course, they should still remain. So this is the new Burmese flag that came out in November 2010, and it's basically supposed to represent a new start, a new beginning for Burma. Well, let's see what actually does happen. This is the location of Burma. It's located in India, China, Thailand, and Laos, or to the east over there. The capital is Naypyidaw. This is an old map. The capital was moved from Rangoon, Yangon to Naypyidaw in 2006. This is a pre-2006 map. Like I said, this is more facts about Burma. It's the world's 40th largest country, between Zambia's 39th and Afghanistan's 41st in comparison, and the 25th largest in population between South Korea and South Africa. It's divided into 7 states and 7 divisions. States are usually based on ethnic backgrounds, like the Karen state, the Shan state. And of course, the Irrawaddy River, which is the main river in Burma, splits the country in two. It's the 15th longest river in the world, around 2,100 kilometers. The Burmese north is dominated by glacial mountains, the Hengwan Mountains, which are an extension of the Himalayas. And of course, the rest of Burma is tropical rainforest. Burma has an extensive coastline in the Indian Ocean, and the Irrawaddy empties out into a very extensive delta when it meets the Irrawaddy Delta. Okay, so this is the definition, legal definition, or post-colonial history of Burma. Burma has a very long history, so I decided just to do it after gaining independence from the United Kingdom in 1948. During this time, Burma was a British colony and was overrun by the Japanese. So the British tried to kick out the Japanese out of Burma, and so they were alliancing with the ethnic people, the Karen, the Shan, and the Mon people tried to win back their colony. And of course, they promised independence to the new state. Of course, when Burma gained independence from the UK in 1948, this never happened. And so the Karen Nation has been having waging ethnic conflict ever since. And after the independence, a very weak parliamentary democracy came into force that was totally unable to support the country. The economy collapsed, poverty was rife, and of course the conflict began with the Karen and Shan peoples became rife with human rights violations of the kind I'll describe later on. And in 1962, the military, knowing that the sense of conflict was occurring, overthrew the government. And Nie Win was the leader of this State Peace and Restoration Council in 1962. and implemented the Burmese way of socialism, which is a very, very, very rigid central planning economic scheme, which caused extreme damage to the country's agriculture and service industries. In 1988, August 8, 1988, the students began the uprising against this government, against this economic policy, and the response was a brutal crackdown. Many student protesters were arrested, detained without trial, tortured, and quite a few of them still remain in jail, though quite a good chunk of them have been released in the last 2-3 months, but still, the vast majority are still in jail. And of course, in 1990, one of the leaders of the student uprising, Aung San Suu Kyi, contested an election which the National League of Democracy won, but the military annulled the results and imprisoned her under house arrest until November 21st, 2010. And of course, it was renamed State Peace and Development Council from State Law and Order Restoration Council, a PR gesture, but it's still the same thing. And of course, in 2006, it began the process of the 7 Steps to Democracy Reform Package. By the way, the democracy is not the kind of democracy you're familiar with. It's the democracy in the junta's terms. The new constitution that they wrote was a very pro-military constitution. To this day, the new parliament's seats are 25% reserved for the military, and many of the elections were designed in such a way as to ensure the plurality of votes were for the military-dominated parties. In 2007, Cyclone Nargis hit, which was one of the worst natural disasters in Asia. Well, for a very long time, probably the closest one was tsunami in 2004. And of course, the government didn't deny humanitarian aid, and the idea thinking that would be an excuse for an Iraq-style invasion, which I think was outrageous as an excuse. And in 2010, a new election was held on the military's terms, and it was not exactly a free and fair election, but ever since then, the government decided to embark on some reforms in order to attract investors and to gain recognition in the international community. It released Aung San Suu Kyi, released a few political prisoners, it raised a few censorship measures in the media, it allowed for greater freedom of speech and assembly, and recently for trade unions, and it started to negotiate ceasefire with the ethnic groups, but I'm not sure how it's going to go, and a good chunk of the international community is also unsure. Why now? Why so soon? All right. This is the definition of the genocide. This is the legal definition of genocide as defined by the United Nations Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide. And here, in the present convention, genocide means any of the following acts committed with intent to destroy in whole or in part a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group as such. A, killing members of the group. B, causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group. C, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction, whole or in part. D, imposing measures intended to prevent births in the group. And E, forcibly transferring children of the group to another group. And of course, this is a video of the genocide survivors who fled across the border into Thailand. If I can get to the link. I got it. Sorry about this. Here. Trying to get to the link. What do you mean it's not connecting?
You can go up to.
I think if you press Control and click on it,
Okay.
but you have to do the new editing first.
No, I'm just going to go through the internet.
Good man.
Because it's just ridiculous. Sorry about this. This stretch is only for 10 minutes, not for an hour. internally displaced people, those are people who are displaced due to conflict in the country. Refugees cross the border. It's different.
DARE, Drug and Alcohol Recovery and Education Network, is a local grassroots organization that was made by displaced people of Burma for the displaced people of Burma. At DARE, we work with people who have lost everything. Everything for them has been destroyed. What DARE tries to do is help people to find their minds again. They've lost their freedom, but a free mind cannot be destroyed. When people recover from drugs and alcohol, they are free.
And those sports are other issues besides drugs and alcohol.
Right now I'm living on the Thai-Burma border in a small community called Mesariang. There are over 150,000 people in 9 refugee camps on the Thai-Burma border and over 1 million migrant workers spread along the border. Many of these migrant workers are also refugees. They just don't have a camp to stay in.
I was a refugee since I was in my mother's womb. I'm now 53, I'm still a refugee.
And these are other refugees in Thailand across the border.
What is peace? What is democracy? I don't understand until today. I really want to feel and experience about peace, democracy, right? But I don't have. That's why I will fight for my people and for myself until we get peace and freedom and democracy in our country. This is my responsibility to my people. Yeah, my name is Living Night Sun, and I'm working in the KW Cran Women's Organization. I came to this area since 1988 after the students' uprising. I did not stay in my country and then I escaped from there.
I think what a lot of people don't know is that the military regime of Burma, we call it the military regime because they are a dictatorship. They've been in power for the last 50 years, are in the process of actually ethnically cleansing the minorities in Burma. There's about 6 main ones, but they systematically find ways to annihilate the people of their own country. Burma has the largest army in Southeast Asia with no external enemies. They are a narco-dictatorship. They grow opium. This is opium that is refined into heroin and makes its way to the West. And they use the money that they get from selling the drugs to buy arms to use against their own people. And the people that I'm working with are the people who are running away out of their
In
own
this region,
land
they're telling us
so
the
that
gold
they
triangle.
are not killed or started it. The Burmese regime refuses to let the people govern themselves, refuses to let them use their own languages. They want to be rid of them, and they're succeeding.
Last 2006 and before that about the end of 2005 is heavy offensive to the Karen state. And so the offensive started since then in the whole year. So at least 30,000 of our Karen people become IDP. No place, no houses, and until today they are hiding in the jungle. No food, no shelter, even water, and no medicines. Because the expedition came to their villages and destroyed their villages, burned down their houses, and then some of them were killed. And then some of them were forced for labor. Some women were raped in the offensive area. So for 2007, really, it's very dangerous, and really, I'm really worried about starvation because there is no food, no shelter, no medicine for the people. We need a humanitarian assistance for that area.
Ini anak dan so, kah, dia kamu bukan, dia kau minta, kamu buat ni pe, papaku, wipaku apa parti or, ada sebuah musik ni, buat kamu buat ni pada apa ni.
Convention on the Rights of the Child, which is a list, which is a worldwide agreement drafted by the United Nations in the 80s. I think it came into force in 1990, November 28th, 1990, if I'm correct. It basically enumerates in 54 articles all the rights that children have around the world. And In Article 1, children are defined as people under the age of 18. I'm not going to go for every single one of the articles. Again, like I said, there's 54, but I want to pick some of the more egregious violations. This is Article 9, and I'll read it to you. I know it's very, very long. So, here we go. States parties shall ensure that child should not be separated from his or her parents against their will, except when competent authorities, subject to judicial review, determine according to applicable law and procedures that such separation is necessary for the best interests of the child. Such determination may be necessary in a particular case, such as one involving abuse or neglect of a child, whether parents or one of the parents living if separate, decisions must be made at the child's place of residence. In any proceedings pursuant to paragraph 1 of the present article, all interested parties shall be given an opportunity to participate in the proceedings and make their views known. State statutes shall respect the right of the child to separate from one or both parents, to maintain personal relations and direct contact with both parents, or in any place except in this contact with the child's best interest. This is the part that really is very important. When such separation results from any action initiated by a state party, such as detention, imprisonment, exile, deportation, or death, including death arising from any clause or other persons in the custody of the state, of one or both parents of the child, that state party shall, upon request by the parents, the child, or for purpose, another member of the family, with the essential information concerning the whereabouts of the absent members of the family, unless the provisional information should be detrimental to the well-being of the child. States parties shall further ensure that for submission of such a request shall itself entail no adverse consequences for the persons concerned. And of course, with a situation like what you've seen in the video, this is questionable. Article 12. States parties shall ensure to the child, who is capable of forming his or her own views, the right to express those views freely in all matters affecting the child, the views of the child being given duly in accordance to the age and maturity of the child. For this purpose, the child shall in particular be provided the necessary opportunity to be heard in judicial and administrative proceedings affecting the child, either directly or through representatives or an appropriate body, in a manner consistent with the procedural rules of national law. Well, like I said, these children who try to speak out against this, well, they're silenced and they're tortured. And in fact, there's a particular article concerning torture, which I'll get to in a moment. And there's other issues as well. Article 15, states parties recognize the right of the child to freedom of association and freedom of peaceful assembly. No restrictions may be placed on the exercise of these rights, other than those imposed in conformity with the law, and which are necessary in a democratic society in the interest of national security, public safety, public order, the protection of public health, and more also protection of rights and freedoms of others. This is actually a very important scene in the book Hangdown Mountains, which is how my main protagonist, San Rwanda, gets involved in human rights activism in Burma and gets into a whole lot of problems, which I'll describe later. And just here we go. This is 19. States parties shall take all appropriate legislative, administrative, social, and educational measures to protect the child from all forms of physical or mental violence, injury or abuse, neglect or negligent treatment, maltreatment or exploitation, including sexual abuse, while in the care of parents, legal guardians, or any other person's care of the child. Such protective measures should, as appropriate, include effective procedures for the establishment of social programs to provide necessary support for the child and for those who have the care of the child, as well as for other forms of prevention and for identification, reporting, referral, investigation, treatment, and follow-up of instances of child maltreatment described heretofore and as appropriate for judicial involvement. Well, this one's pretty obvious how it's violated. If you've seen the video of the genocide, and I also have a video about the particular issues related to the Convention Rights of Child. Let me just go get through the articles. And I'm really concerned. I know this is really narrow, so I'll just read it to you. It's very Article 24. That's it, Article 24. And I know some of you can't read it, so I'll read it to you. I'm so sorry about this stupid PowerPoint. Article 24. States rights recognize the right of the child to enjoy the highest attainable standard of health and to facilities for the treatment of illness and rehabilitation of health. States parties shall strive to ensure no child is deprived of his or her right of access to such healthcare services. States parties shall pursue full implementation right and particularly take appropriate measures to aid diminish infant and child mortality, to ensure the purchase of necessary medical assistance and healthcare, to all show with emphasis on the development of primary health. C, to combat disease and malnutrition, including the framework for primary health care, to ensure the application of readily available technology and the provision of adequate nutritious food and clean drinking water, take into consideration dangers and risks of environmental pollution, to ensure appropriate prenatal and postnatal care for mothers, to ensure that all segments of society, in particular parents and children, are informed, have access to education, and support the use of basic knowledge of child health and nutrition, the advantages of breastfeeding, hygiene, environmental sanitation, and prevention of accidents. To develop preventive health care, guidance for parents, and family planning education services, states parties shall take all effective and appropriate measures with a view to abolishing traditional practice prejudicial to the health of children. States parties undertake, promote, and encourage international cooperation with a view to achieving progressive but full realization of this right, recognized in the present argument. In this regard, particular account should be taken to these developing countries. Well, obviously Burma is a developing country, but my bigger concern is that it's because Burma spends so much money on the military to devote away to this ethnic cleansing, I'll call it as genocide. It spends the lowest amount on healthcare of any country in the world. It's the healthcare system is very haphazard, and it's completely, it's a disaster. There's no other way to describe it, just simply a disaster. There's no other way to Article 27. States parties recognize the right of every child to stand and live and advocate for the child's physical, mental, spiritual, moral, and then social development. The parents are responsible for the child, but the primary responsibility is to secure the abilities and financial capacities, the conditions of living necessary for the child's development. States parties in accordance with national conditions and their means should take appropriate measures to assist parents and others responsible for the child to implement this right and shall, in cases of need, provide material assistance and support programs, particularly with regard to nutrition, clothing, and housing. States parties should take all appropriate measures to secure the recovery of maintenance for the child, for the parents and other parents having financial responsibility for the child, both within the state party and from abroad. In particular, when the persons having financial responsibility for the child lives in a state different from that of their own, states parties shall promote a statute to the international agreements or the conclusion of such agreements, as well as the making of other appropriate arrangements. Well, first thing, like I said, many of the refugees who live in Thailand have very hard time connecting with other members of the family who are still in Burma, and with the situation being what it is, it's just absolutely awful. And obviously you can't secure the best conditions of living in a situation like this. It's just impossible. There you go. Article 28. States parties recognize the right of child's education, and in the future achieving this right, progressive on the basis of equal opportunity, they shall in particular make primary education available, compulsory, be available free to all. Encourage the development of different forms of secondary education, including general and vocational education. Make them available and accessible to every child, and take appropriate measures to the induction of free education and offering financial assistance in case of need. Make higher education accessible to all on the basis of capacity by every appropriate means. Make educational and vocational information and guides available and accessible to all children. Take measures to encourage regular attendance at schools and the reduction of dropout rates. States parties should take all appropriate measures to ensure that school discipline is administered in a manner consistent with the child's human dignity and conforming to the present convention. States parties shall promote and encourage international cooperation in matters linked to education, particularly contributing to the elimination of ignorancy and illiteracy throughout the world, and facilitating access to scientific and technical knowledge and modern teaching methods. In this regard, particular attention shall be taken to the needs of developing countries. Well, again, Burma is a developing country, but just like in healthcare, Burma spends very little on education. I think it's first or second least in education. Again, all this money is going to the military to support their genocide against the Karen, Shan, and other ethnic peoples. Okay. Article 34. States parties. No, it's not. education, economic exploitation, I'll get to slavery later, and genocide. And of course, this is the video of child soldiers in Burma. It actually works this time. What do you mean a potential security concern? Yes. Alright, let me just make it a full screen.
Tens of thousands of child soldiers continue to be used inside Burma in the consensus assessment of several rights groups and Burma Watchers. The Thai-based Human Rights Education Institute for Burma, HREIB, says that special attention and action from the international community is needed to address the violations of the rights of children in Burma, especially with reference to their continued use as soldiers.
The single largest culprit would be the Burma Army. They have also documented villagers in Karen State testifying to cases of child soldiers within the Democratic Communist Army, the DKBA. We've also spoken to children a year and a half ago who were recruited in a splinter group that broke away from the KMLA in 7th grade in the Peace Council.
Its REIB has compiled a report entitled For Common Future and a documentary video entitled Path from Peace. Both the report and the video drew on interviews conducted between October 2007 and March 2008 with 119 child soldiers in refugee camps inside Burma, along with borders with India, Thailand, and China. Children who attempt to escape or desert the military are commonly beaten, forcibly recruited, or imprisoned. Interviews were also conducted with the parents of child soldiers, school teachers, and leaders of social and armed organizations, with the central focus of the report being the 6 rights violations mentioned in United Nations Security Council Resolution 1612, originally adopted in 2005.
အဓိကတော့လုံခြုံရေးကောင်စီဆုံးဖြတ်ချက်မှာတစ်ချောက်ပြည့်နေမှာပါတယ်ကလေးတွေကျူးပေါင်းချက်6ချက်ကိုကျွန်တော်အဓိကထားပြီးစုံစမ်းဖော်ထုတ်တင်ပြတာဖြစ်ပါတယ်။အဲဒီ6ချက်ကတော့ကလေးတွေကိုတက်ဖြတ်မှုနောက်ကလေးတွေပေါ်မှာနေနိုင်ဆိုင်ဆိုတာကလေးတွေကိုဖမ်းဆီးမှုကလေးတွေကိုစစ်သားလေးတုံးချမှုနောက်တစ်ခါမှာလူသားချင်းစာနာမှုအကူအညီတွေရင်းပယ်မှုနောက်ဆုံးတစ်ချက်ကတော့ကလေးတွေရှိနေတဲ့အကြောင်းတွေအမှန်မှန်ရှိရင်ဒီစေရုံတွေကိုတိုက်ခိုက်မှုအဲ့ဒီချက်6ချက်ကိုကျွန်တော်တို့အဓိကထားပြီးတော့စုံစမ်းထားတယ်။အဲ့တော့ဒီအဓိကတော့ကျွန်တော်ဒီ6ချက်စလုံးကမြန်မာနိုင်ငံမှာရှိတဲ့လက်နက်ကိုင်တွေကကျွန်တော်လေးတွေကိုခန်းစားနေရတယ်။
The Burmese army has reportedly already recruited 70,000 child soldiers and looks to increase that number, though the ongoing random recruitment of children throughout Burma, according to the International Human Rights Organization, Human Rights Watch. The Burmese army recruits children primarily in docks, railway, and bus stations. Consistent with its platform, its REIB is also advocating for the Karen National Liberation Army, KNLA, Karen Army, New Democratic Army, Kachin, Chin National Army, and the Kachin Independence Army to cease in their recruitment and use of child soldiers.
As more significant issues. And this is is the Slavery Convention. And it's a status and condition of her person of any of the powers statutory ownership or exercise. Slave trade includes all acts involved in the capture, acquisition, or disposal of a person with intent to reduce him to slavery. All acts involved in the acquisition of a slave with a view to sell or exchange him. All acts of disposal by sale or exchange of a slave are part of the view to being sold or exchanged, and general every act of trade or transport in slaves. And yes, slavery still occurs, ladies and gentlemen. It hasn't been, it's not abolished, it's not done.
တရားလုံးစုနေစားထိုင်းနိုင်ငံပဲချမ်းကကာရာဥပဒေစားတော့ဆိုင်တဲ့ဆိုင်မှာဧည့်သည်လာတော့စောင့်ကြည့်နေကြတယ်မိန်းကလေးငယ်တွေဘလို့ကြိုက်ကြဒီမိန်းကလေးငယ်ဒီလိုစားတော့ဆိုင်ကိုရောက်ရှိလာတဲ့အမျိုးသမီးနဲ့ကလေးများအစီအစဉ်အနာဂတ်ကဒီစရိုင်းကိုပြောပါတယ်
သူပြတော့ဒီရောင်းစားခံရတဲ့အမျိုးသမီးတွေကဒီရန်ကုန်တိုင်းရလည်းရှိတယ်။ပဲခူးတိုင်းရလည်းရှိတယ်။သူတို့ကပြင်ရလာဒီနေစားထိုင်းမှာနေစားပြတယ်မှာတော့သူ
Alright, I honestly thought there was an English translation, but apparently it's in Thai. And no, I don't, this one language is that I don't know. Thai is not a language I know. These are women who were kidnapped in the usual places, the bus stations, railway stations, outside of schools, and basically sold and to the Burmese military, used as forced labor, and just abused. And so these women are basically now in an apartment in Bangkok, working with anti-slavery groups there.
I think you can go back into the PowerPoint icon on the tool right there. I'll bring it up where you look top.
And this is the last of the human rights instruments we're going for. This is the torture convention. This is basically I'll give you the short definition of torture. It's a very long-winded definition of torture. It's basically punishing people for an act that they have committed or a third person has committed, or to coerce them into admitting something, or as a way to solicit information. First of all, torture is notoriously bad. I mean, I probably could torture you, any one of you here, to say anything I want. So, first of all, for those people who believe that torture is an effective way of getting information, well, it's not. And it also leaves tremendous physical and psychological scars, like the ones that I'll describe in the next video, which is in the next slide. It's a pro-democracy activist, and this is in English, I promise.
Rules by one of the most
Thank you, sorry about the technology problem. I don't know all these people.
responsible for this war against ethnic women and children.
Sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen. I know that was torture enough for you.
Rules by one of the most brutal dictatorship in the world. The dictatorship charged by the United Nations crime against humanity for its systematic abuses of human rights and condemned internationally for transparent power to the democratically elected government of the country, the party led by the Nobel Peace Laureate Aung San Suu Kyi. Burma military regime is responsible for using rape as a weapon of war against ethnic women and children. And there are more than 1,000 political prisoners in Burma, many of whom are routinely tortured. I myself was a former political prisoner and tortured by the military regime. I was beaten until I lost consciousness. They beat me again and deserted my country and forced to flee from Burma. Now I'm working for the Burma Campaign UK, which is part of the global movement campaigning for democracy and human rights in Burma. We lobby the UK government and the European Union to put more pressure on the regime. Burma is the forgotten country. In Sudan, over 1,500 villages have been burned down, and the Prime Minister Gordon Brown showed his concern. Why? In Burma, more than 3,000 villages have been burned down, and he never showed his concern. We need your support. We need your support for the cause of democracy and human rights in Burma. We need the cross-border aid to provide millions of people hiding in the jungle from the Burmese army. We need your support to democracy. And we need your support for the cause of fighting for freedom and justice in Burma. For more information, visit our website at www.burmacampaign.org.uk.
So, that's the basic background about Burma, and I'm just going to go into my book now.
Bottom right, Roman.
Should I work in the PowerPoint sheets? Hanging on Mountains, which is, I have several copies of it here, right here. Thank you. It's a book I wrote about this person in Kashin State who was actually parent, and it was not exactly black and white, I think it was across state boundaries. And he lives in a fictional village in Mayansada on the Irrawaddy River. And this village is destroyed. It's one of those 3,000 villages that are destroyed every year. It's a fictional village. And then he meets his friend who Chiyong Damasang upriver, and who has been campaigning against us for years. And then he tells him the story. And, well, he's not surprised, but of course, Sam Mwanda is. At that time, all his, the entire village is destroyed, all his friends and family are killed. He's the last person to survive, basically. He goes into a peaceful protest against the regime in the state capital of Maigachina. And he gets arrested, arbitrarily arrested, and sentenced in a mock trial. Well, it's not a fair trial at all. And then he's sent to jail, and he's tortured extensively. And I'm not going to go into the graphic details of how he's being tortured in the PowerPoint. You can read the book about it. And then by chance, he meets a newly appointed human rights representative from ASEAN, which is the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, which Burma is a member state of. And of course, Burma is trying to get more in tune with ASEAN and the international community. And of course, these kind of human rights violations are simply just not going to go. And then of course he goes into Malaysia, where this representative is from, and he's charged with being an illegal immigrant under Malaysia's notorious Internal Security Act, which is a very broad, extensive immigration anti-terrorism measure. This is before 9/11, it's like in the 60s and 70s it was imposed. He barely gets out of charge, he pays a fine. He gets like a public education test, and he gets placed in like a grade 7 in a Malaysian school. He's a very intelligent person. He passes all his subjects: Malay, English, geography, and history. He joins a local chapter of the an Amnesty International group in Kuala Lumpur, which is the capital of Malaysia. And of course, that's another issue. He goes from a culture shock from going from a small village in Burma to one of the probably most largest cities in the region. I think Kuala Lumpur is like 2.5 million people. And then he goes to university in America in Stanford. Yes, he gets into Stanford. In Stanford, he gets involved with the Burmese and other Asian diaspora in the San Francisco Bay Area. He majors in political science with one blind objective: find out who destroyed his village, and found them responsible. And during this time, during the summer, he walks between all the various consulates in America, in San Francisco, in Washington, New York. He actually walks between all these cities. And over the summer, he gets goes, gets an internship in Slovenia, in the former Yugoslavia, to relationship. I know the situation for in Yugoslavia was very similar to what is currently happening in Burma, and so he basically gets experience on how to find people responsible for violating international human rights, humanitarian law, which is kind of I described previously. He eventually graduates with a degree in political science, and he finds a person responsible for his village, and it's a huge media circus at the International Criminal Court where that person gets charged. And that's, of course, is a very, very broad overview of the book. I decided, and if you want more details, you can read the book. Thank you very, very much. If you want to look at them, I will be appreciative.
Roman, would you also be open to taking questions?
Yes, I would. Any questions?
Is there widespread consensus on it actually being genocide, or would it be more accurately called an ethnic cleansing? Can you have a political, is political affiliation actually criteria for genocide?
It used to be, and the Genocide Convention, political affiliation was one of the issues that Raphael Lemkin, as a lawyer, tried to include, but the Soviet Union under Stalin at the time didn't like the idea. But even if that's not included, the Burmese government deliberately targets particular ethnic groups, which would definitely fall under the criteria of genocide as agreed by the United Nations December 9th, 1948. And thank you for bringing up the difference between ethnic cleansing and genocide. Genocide is deliberate killing of a particular group. Ethnic cleansing is just basically dispersal of a group and creating conditions for that particular group to make a particularly difficult time of existing. And any other questions?
Robin, I came in a little late, so I don't know if maybe you addressed this at the beginning, but of all the places that you could have chosen or wrote about, why did you choose Burma?
I chose Burma because it's one of the most forgotten places in the world, and it's unbelievable that these kind of things happen in the 21st century, and the mass media is doing nothing about it. And it's crazy because this is a region that the media loves, Southeast Asia. We all talk about China, India, Thailand, Singapore, and they completely forget about what's going on in Burma. That's one. Any other questions?
In terms of the story of your protagonists and their experience within Burma, how typical would you say that experience would be?
Ooh, good question. It's a difficult question to answer because it depends on lots of variables. It depends on the ethnic group you are. It depends where in Burma you are. It depends on your relation, how your family is related to the government. But if you compare it to the typical Karen experience in Burma, I would say it's very, very, very accurate. I would probably, many children who grew up in this area in the north, in the Kachin state, where the Hangdon Mountains are, would probably have a very similar view of the situation. Yeah?
In our philosophy of human rights class, we dealt a section on Buddhism and human rights, and the two figures we looked at were the Dalai Lama and Aung San Suu Kyi. Does the Dalai Lama take perspective on Burma, and is there activism going on outside of Burma?
There's lots of activism inside of Burma. I myself actually organized demonstrations before. When I lived in New Jersey, I went to New York City and organized demonstrations in the consulate. I know exactly where the Burmese consulate is in New York. And there's also activism going on in the UK, in Belgium, in front of the EU headquarters in Brussels, in
Asia?
In Asia, in Japan. There was demonstrations in Japan. There was demonstrations in Singapore. And it's been very profound. In terms of Buddhism, the government pretends to be Buddhist, but obviously these kind of actions don't exactly qualify as being model Buddhists. And and the Dalai Lama is in fact, very concerned about the issue, but I think he's probably more concerned with Tibet at the moment because that's where he's from.
Yes, makes sense.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Do you have any commentary on the recent thawing of relations between the West and Burma, and do you hold any optimism for that?
It's way too early to tell. It's just way too early to tell because these reforms that Burma is doing. Obviously, Burma is playing the favorite game of the regime is the wait and see game. We'll implement these reforms and see what happens. So I don't know what they're actually trying to see and how Burma is trying to gain favor of the international community. And I know Burma wants to be thawed, but what exactly does it mean? Especially considering that the military's view of democracy isn't the kind of democracy we're all familiar with as Canadians, Americans, Europeans. So I don't know exactly what kind of thought the Burmese government is thinking of. So I don't know. I think it's way too early to tell. Any other questions?
Guess not. So Roman, thank you very much for your presentation. I think.
And yes, here are copies of the books that.
Are you selling them?
I'm selling them. I'm selling them for $15. I think both Canadian and American, $15 on Amazon.com. I think Amazon.ca also has copies of this book as well. So if you want to go